Everyone. I think we're just getting all the fun streaming services up and running and going from there. And welcome. I'm excited to have you all here for, I think it's our first official like Wherobots office hours. So that's kind of what we're doing today. A few different things we're going to cover, but mostly this time is about you being able to ask questions, share anything that you have, and everything like that. So just as we get started, I'm Matt. I head up all of our customer education and help with some of the different tutorials and different pieces of our product here and teaching all the different things that we can do. If you have any questions, you can always drop those into the Q&A. So there should be a button down here. That's the best place to get those so they log and I don't get lost in the chat. And then the chat is basically for sharing kind of anything else that you want to along the process as well. So I always like to know kind of who's here. So if you're able to just type in the chat to make sure also that's working, who you are and where you're from. If you're watching this on LinkedIn or YouTube, you can just add a comment. We should be able to see those as well. So add those as here. Hey, Ryan, how's it going? Cool. Just yeah, everyone else who wants to add that in there, we can get going. And it looks like the chat's working. So perfect. And then I just want to get the last thing here is just to see if there's any comments coming in from the other channels, so I can check that too. But cool. All right. So excited to have everybody here today. Yeah, what we wanted to do is just to talk through a few different things coming up. We have a couple different things that we're working on here. So new product announcements, and then yeah, I have a special guest who's going to talk us through our MCP server. So we'll go through that as well. So yeah, I'll just quickly share my screen here and kind of talk through some of the things that we're working on from that perspective. So just as a quick kind of update, I wanted to do a short plug for some things that we have coming up. We have this new events page, so you can kind of track all the different things that we have coming and different, events or learning opportunities, stuff like that. Obviously, you are here, so that one doesn't sort of apply to you. But there's a few other things we have. Next week, we're doing a workshop along with Astronomer. Those are the folks that have built a cloud service on top of Airflow. And Airflow is like one of these really great pieces that allows us to automate and orchestrate and move different things through a kind of consistent process. So I'm really excited about this workshop. We're doing this together. So it's going to be what we're calling like a builder workshop. Basically, it's a 2-day thing where one day we go through the work, show you what you're doing, allow you to actually build this out, go through a pipeline from end to end, and then actually in the second half on a Thursday we do like an office hours where you can ask questions, share all those different things, and go from there. So that's what we're doing there. You can actually go here and register. So there's about 67 folks that have signed up for that. You get a little mini certification once it's all said and done. But Airflow is, I think, a really great way to combine some of the different things that we're doing with Wherobots and build some really scalable pipelines. Saw some more people here from Germany and Mexico. Hey, everybody. There's another webinar coming up later in March. So that is with our friends at Felt, kind of showing how to build a foundation for spatial AI and making the making physical world data AI ready. That's a mouthful, but I think it's going to be a really cool one. You're hearing it here first, so just keep your ears and eyes to the social media. There's some cool news about our two companies kind of coming out pretty here soon. So just a quick teaser there, something to be aware of. There's a few other things I want to talk about, and one is around RasterFlow. So I don't know if anyone's heard about RasterFlow. If you have, just go ahead and drop a comment, or if you haven't, we can talk about that. But this is a new component of our product. RasterFlow, one of the biggest things we heard is that there's this need to not just process raster data, but make it really easy to take those processed data sets and then run AI models on top of them. And RasterFlow is the way to do that, right? It's a combination of different pieces together. This is the blog post that you can kind of work through to understand all the different components and challenges of it. But I love this image here because this really kind of summarizes like the whole thing of what we're doing. So it seems like a kind of something trivial where we need to collect field boundaries and define where there's different fields and things like that. But of course, as things change over time, you have different slices of that temporal data. And then as that gets introduced, you see there's some issues here with things like cloud cover. In different areas, these images won't be usable because clouds are in the way. And then as they change, you also want to get a sense of time change. Are they changing? Is the vegetation, kind of changing the colors, all these different pieces? That whole process of, kind of mosaicing and patching and updating these images is really a heavy manual one to do that. Now you can do it, locally on small scales and things like that. If you need to go to even like a very, even a moderately large scale, like a county, even something into, a much higher level, like a state, province, or a country, that becomes very difficult to start to do. And it's also, very, manual. It's not distributed well. It's not kind of scalable from that perspective. So that's one challenge that we solve is just that data processing, taking these data sets, making these mosaics, patching, edge effects, all these different things to help kind of unify in a single data set that can be used and stacking that so you can do some temporal analysis, which most of these models do some sort of temporal view. The next is actually doing the detection. Now, this is the detection of these field boundaries using and then in the pixelated raster space. So you can see here it's detected these fields, circular fields and where they are. And that's great if you have an image, but what am I supposed to do with that to like analyze it and put it through, my data workflow or anything kind of consistent with that? That's where Wherobots DB comes in, and it actually allows you to take those outputs and vectorize them. So you're just basically a spatial join away. And this is all contained in our RasterFlow product. I definitely recommend checking this out here. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat so everyone can kind of see that here. And I think I'll just put that here as well. Sorry, I have the live stream and the Zoom, so I'm going to make sure to get it in both places. So I definitely recommend checking this out. You can walk through this entire blog post. It does a really good job of explaining it. But if you're interested, you can also, I think, go to the bottom here and you can sign up for the private preview and get access to it. This is just kind of what it looks like, just to give you a sense of what that will look like in your Wherobots account. So this is the new model hub, which is a new feature alongside some of the different pieces you have here. And you can see all, you'll basically, there's 4 models that we've loaded in. There's also the ability to bring your own model. So we have different things like canopy height. You can see the different regression models here that have been run. There's some information about where it's from, the licensing, all these different pieces. Here's a sample output in ZAR format. And then you can look at some of these other ones, which is rural road segmentation. There's TileToNet, which is finding sidewalks, crosswalks, different things like that, and then Fields of the World, which is the one you saw earlier. So any of these you can kind of take and run. You can kind of open this up and take a look at the notebook here. So it's going to open that instance, and we can take a look at that in a minute. The other post and short plug I'll put in is talking a little bit about these like medallion architectures or things like that, and how to create scalable, usable data pipelines really efficient. This is a blog post I put together, so if you want to check this one out as well, I'll put that in the chat. This is kind of this is a good read, and I'll share that. But there's also kind of a push and a plug is our geospatial data engineering course. This is the second time we've done this course. You can sign up over here at learn@wherobots.com. And as well as for the Airflow workshop. So both of these things are available now. We just kicked off the first session of the second cohort. So it's not too late to join if you haven't joined already. There's a lot of people kind of joining. We do live sessions for 5 weeks, one on a Tuesday and a Thursday, 5 different workshops where we actually go through a lot of these kind of concepts, how we think through medallion architecture, how to build these pieces together, all these different kind of components. So if you are interested in that, you can go ahead and sign up. That's at learn@wherobots.com and get going from there. So you can kind of check all those different things out and see what's going on. So there's a lot of, activity going on here from both, product developments, some of the different learning opportunities and things like that. I'm going to see that the RasterFlow might take a minute to load here. But given that, Puyan, I'm going to just introduce, or I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself because you'll do a better job of it than I will. And we'll kind of jump into talking a little bit about another big product advancement we've been making, which is our MCP server. So Puyan, I'm going to kick it over to you and let you take it from there.
Beautiful. Thank you, Matt. Yeah, my name is Puyan. I'm one of the product managers at Wherobots. I lead our data and developer experiences. And then the purpose of the talk today is to just basically give you an overview of, first off, why we built the MCP server and perhaps give you a demo of how to set it up and maybe do some exploratory analysis together. Without further ado, as to why we built this, we got a lot of feedback from our customers that clustered around 2 things. There were like 2 types of personas that were coming to us. One of them, geospatial experts who wanted to get to know our platform, perhaps like do take advantage of our planetary scale, they essentially their feedback was that this is still a big space. There's like a lot of functions to wrap my head around. There's like a lot of tasks. I wonder if you can leverage AI to help me discover my data, or maybe put some SQL together for me, or maybe just help me do some initial analysis. And then there is a second persona, so to speak, which are data engineers who may or may not be familiar with geospatial concepts, and they wanted to get their feet wet with these concepts. And so SD underscore something may not necessarily translate immediately to something meaningful to them. So what we've built is essentially a tool that is definitely not meant to replace anybody. But it will beautifully augment your workflow with data discovery, where you can imagine in a typical organizational catalog, you may have hundreds of tables or thousands of tables across many databases. You have your open data sets. Some of them are unstructured, some of them are structured. And in being able to do a semantic search across these is important, and being able to find the right set of data for your analysis is important. So that was one of the use cases that we targeted with this MCP server. The other one is essentially an assistant with exploratory analysis. So maybe you start with the typical analysis starts with a question. Can you help me get some initial insights that I can then gut check against that question? So the MCP server, as you will see shortly, has the ability to execute queries and then give you insights. And then finally, we built this as a code along agent, essentially helping you put together SQL, put together spatial Python or spatial SQL that you can then upload to Wherobots Cloud and then just run. And with a little bit of debug help, you can even put together production data pipelines. So that's kind of the overview around the why. As to the what, I tend to do a lot of my work in VS Code, so this is what I'm going to use today, and I'm sharing my screen real quick to demonstrate our MCP server. But you can essentially use any tool that takes in an MCP server URL, like an HTTP endpoint, because that's what our MCP server is, plus an API key. If you need instructions around setup, I'm just going to paste this in chat real quick, and then just gonna jump quickly to doing the demo if I can find my chat. There we go. So the instructions to set things up is here, but it's fairly simple. You just open up your panel in VS Code. You just add a server. You just go to HTTP as the endpoint, and then you just give it our MCP server endpoint, which I'll paste here. And then once you do that, it'll ask you to give it a name, XYZ for now, because I've already set it up. And then, yeah, you can choose to have it global or within this workspace, and then you have it, and it'll give you the server. And once you have this server, you essentially need to put in an API key. I already have mine set up, so that's why it's pre-filled. But this is the place where you put in an API key that you'll obtain from Wherobots. The instructions to do so are in the link that I sent, but it's very easy. You just go to setting, create a new API key, set an expiry date for it, and then you're good to go. So once you have that, then the next step is just basically list servers, and then I have this one, and then make sure it's started. You'll see my server is started and it's running. So if you want to confirm, if your server says running over here, that means you're ready to go. So now we're essentially ready to kick things off. Now, in my experience, a typical analysis just starts with a question. So in my case, the question that I wanted to explore, truth be told, I'm in the market for apartments, and I love to have like apartments that are close to gyms. So this is what I wanted to do. So that's a question that I'm using for this demo. But a typical analysis starts with a question. You can pose this to the MCP server and just basically tell it to just and then give it an approach, and then tell it to just help you with that. And this is the part of the demo that shows you how you can go from a question to like the right set of data. But like if you've ever worked with these servers, it actually pays to give it some context. And this is what I've been doing over here. So I have a prompt prepared from before this live stream. Essentially, I'm given it a problem. I'm currently in the market for apartments. I want to run analysis to find apartment complexes that are close to a gym, let's say within a 1 mile radius. I also lay out my approach to it a little bit. This is like best, LLM best practices. So I tell it that I wanted to start by helping me find the right data sets. Once we agreed on the data sets to use, then I want to come up with I want to brainstorm an analysis strategy together. Once we have that and agree on the strategy, I want to then run queries. And once we have that and validated the results, maybe I want to have it turned into a notebook. So here I'm actually going to, instead of downtown San Jose, turn this into downtown Campbell, which is a smaller area. I also give it some constraints. So essentially I say, hey, I do not want you to run queries until we get to step number 3. The reason I say tell it that is because executing queries takes time. Like it just, it has to self-correct sometimes, getting a cluster up and running and then, running queries against it, especially against like a larger area may take time. So I just save it for later. I also tell it I don't want you to write code until we get to step number 4 because I don't want it to just start giving me code to execute. This is just not relevant for me. So yeah, I just then ask it to start at step number 1 and then we're good to go. But before I submit this, um, it's one of the things that we've seen is that it's as a best practice, it's pays to use one of the like the latest models. They tend to perform a lot better than a legacy model. So we recommend using like something like Claude Sonnet 5 or ChatGPT 5.2. And then it's important to also set it in agent mode. So it is able to take advantage of some of the tools that we have in our MCP server. So let's see what this comes up with. So if this works, you'll immediately start seeing it utilizing the MCP server. Yeah, it failed on one try and it had just tried the other MCP server beautifully, and now it's able to run queries against it. What it's doing right now is it's exploring my catalog and it's trying to recommend data sets to me. So let's give it a little bit of time, see what it comes back with. Beautiful. As you see, it's starting to propose some data sets. So it's saying, hey, you have overture places for gyms, which makes a lot of sense. I also ask it to give me reasonings. Like, so let's see what the reasoning is. It's like this data set provides a comprehensive global points of interest. I agree with it, which is great for identifying gyms and fitness center. That's great. It's recommending overture buildings for apartments. This is also great. It's also recommending backup data sets, essentially. It's like you can also use Foursquare places, and then, and it's also recommending regrid parcels for property information. But as you can see, it's clearly reaching into my catalog, finding data sets for me, and then, making a recommendation. So it's like, hey, the primary approach, I can use regrid parcels. I actually don't agree with this. For gyms, I'm going to use Overture Maps Foundation. So I'm actually now going to tell it I want you to use Overture OMF data for both buildings and gyms for simplicity. And then um, with that, let's proceed to step number 2. So I'll just say, ask it to come up with an approach. So I have this prompt prepared. Let's see what it does with that. And as you can, and what I'm demonstrating over here is essentially a typical workflow that even 2 colleagues would go through. So you can imagine you have some institutional knowledge about data, you have some institutional knowledge about functions. So you're just trying to come up with an analysis strategy. You're just kind of trying to explore data sets. And as you can see, this is helping you do this a lot faster. Like prior to this, you would have had to Slack some colleagues, look at perhaps do some queries against data. But right now, you're very quickly are able to come up with data sets that might be relevant to you. So let's see what it said about the analysis strategy. So just say I'm going to define an area of interest for downtown Campbell. It's giving it some bounding box. That sounds about right to me. That passes the sniff test. Identify gyms using the Overture Maps foundation for places. That's great. Identify potential apartment buildings. It's filtering by height. That's an interesting approach. We can do that. Create a 1 mile buffer. So it's using SD buffer to create a 1 mile buffer and then using SD intersect. And then it's going to rely on SD distance. So this is where, part of my institutional knowledge, or like maybe I spent some time chatting with Matt, who is like a geospatial expert, and say, hey, distance is going to give you straight line distance, whereas what you want in principle is driving distance to one of these apartments. So I then use this updated knowledge to say SD distance is straight line distance. Is there any way I can get driving distance to these gyms from apartments? Can you update your approach using this new parameter? So yeah, using this, it's coming up now with an updated analysis. So I expect it's going to start recommending some like SD isochrones or, built-in routing capabilities, like if available. Interesting. Let's see if it actually is able to figure out if it's like I'm referring to isochrones. These things take a little bit of time to figure things out. It actually generated a lot of stuff, which I'm going to skim over, but this time it didn't actually. So in my previous chats, I'm lucky enough to have a previous chat window that I can show you. When I posed this question to it, on a second try, it actually got to SD isochrone. So this is also a reality with some of these LLMs that they're sometimes stochastic, but that doesn't matter. We can give it a hint. I heard from one of my colleagues that isochrones may give me that answer. Is there a data set or a function to that effect that you can use? So again, this is very typical of a code along experience that I was explaining earlier. It's now going back to our catalog, trying to see if there's like data sets with isochrones in it. And then voila, with a little bit of hinting, it actually is able to find one of our org data sets, which is overture places with isochrones. And based on that, it's updating its approach. Now, once it's finished, I'm going to then ask it to start executing queries. This step is going to take a little while, as I outlined earlier. I will then use that previous chat that I showed you that, in a previous session before this one, it was able to run queries, debug it itself, and then come up with insights. But showing you a little bit that, it's able to run queries. It first asks for permission. I say like, hey, allow in this session. So then it starts executing these queries. And this is the part where it actually warns you it may take several minutes. So while it's doing that, actually, I'm gonna go to the section of this chat where I ask it to run queries. Voila. Um, if you see, you'll see like it ran this query, found some errors in it, it ran it again. So this is like the model reasoning itself, found some errors. It makes a few attempts, but after a few attempts is able to come back with analysis result for downtown Campbell. So it says 89 apartment complexes within a 1 mile distance of a gym. I found 50 gyms. And then all of these apartments, because they're in a downtown area, are within that within the fit the 1 mile radius constraint that I set for it. So the other thing that I'm going to use over here to demonstrate is once this executing completes, which is the query execution phase completes, I then asked it to then create a notebook for me. And that's what it did in my demo environment. And if I open this up, essentially this this notebook here was entirely generated from this chat using the LLM itself. And as you can see, it's already got like great signs, like it's getting or creating the context, so this is correct, and it's defining the geographic area, and it's doing all the steps that we've chatted about in the
Mm.
previous step, except in a notebook that you can then upload to Wherobots Cloud and execute or even turn into a job. Yeah, so with that, I'm just going to pause, see if there were any questions.
Yeah, if you have
So
questions, make sure to drop those in the Q&A, so I can get to those and check those out as I come in. Yeah, this is really cool. I mean, this is one thing I know. I mean, I know we've been working on it, but it's kind of to kind of share it and show people what we've been doing. I think one of the challenges, with any time you're starting with, a new platform, finding where data is, and even if you're just new to spatial analysis in general, you know what you want to do. You want to be able to find your way and do that very quickly, and then also combine that where you're not going to hit limits of scale or things like that. That's one big problem I see that the MCP server solves. I think the other one that I was kind of curious to ask a little bit about was like how, there's all kinds of AI coding tools and stuff like that that are kind of coming out, Cloud Code and things like that. How did you like design this with those best practices in mind to like, check before running, doing all these different things, generating the notebook, all those different, kind of steps that you went through there. How did you build all those pieces into the MCP?
yeah, that's a great question. Truth be told, we get a lot of boost from the self-reasoning capabilities of an LLM. But what we essentially, the design philosophy was like, let's treat this as if this was a colleague. And then what would a colleague want to do? So it probably wants to explore catalog. It probably wants to take a sample of data and then look at it and then come up with some semantic conclusion. So a lot of the tools that we've given it, barring like pointing it to the documentation, which is like a standard practice, and like when you build any MCP server, is is the ability giving the MCP the tools that I would give to a new hire at Wherobots. And then this has paid dividends, like this ability, like it's reinforcing the self-reasoning. So in other analyses, when I don't give it the constraint that you can't run queries, it actually explores the catalog, goes like, you know what? I don't trust this entirely. Let me just go get a sample of data, see if it actually is close to what I'm doing. And it just that kind of self-reinforcing the reasoning of the model is actually
Yep.
paying huge dividends.
Nice. Yeah, a few questions came in while we were talking. Jake was asking if the MCP functionality is built into VS Code out of the box. Are there other MCP clients that you recommend? Things like that.
The MCP is just, yeah, it's just an add-on to VS Code right now. So you just can configure it directly on VS Code. Others that I would recommend, not off the top of my head, like one of my new way of working these days is just honestly open code. And open code self recommends tools that it may need to, and which is super helpful in my opinion. So I don't know if hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah. Um, there's another one from Bjorn. What is the MCP server offering? Is it mainly the data catalog, or can it connect to your data? I believe that's the question. It said more, but can it connect to other data sets in Wherobots?
In any data set you have in your catalog, it can connect to. It's well, let me also answer that differently. So catalog exploration is what it does. Query execution is this other main capability, and then code generation is the third one.
Okay, perfect. Ben had a question here. Say we want to bring our own specialized data, like certain POIs, into this analysis. What prep would be needed in terms of documentation or context to get it into the catalog and allow the LLM to think about it in the broader context of uh, canonical data like the Overture Maps data set? Or could that focus set of data be loaded separately, contextually? What would someone need to do that? So great follow up on the last question too.
Yeah, that's a fantastic follow-up. I think so. So first off, the good news is that so long as your data is in Wherobots catalog, the LLM can access it and try to semantically understand it. And I think it already does a great job out of the box without a ton of context or information in terms of figuring out what's in the data and then perhaps getting some guesses. And when it falls short, it actually attempts to, as I said earlier, run a query and get a sense. But, as with other things, if you can provide the LLM more context, like if you can say, here's an MD file that explains what this data set is, you'll shortcut a lot of that. Yeah, that's like the TLDR, but it can absolutely work with your own data sets
Yep.
that you bring into Whereabouts Catalog.
Yeah, that's what I like about this, and I think it shows like for me like the power of even having a catalog in the first place that can tell you all these different things, and you can connect your data, integrate it with other data sets that we're bringing forward. If there are data sets that you or folks on this call would like to see in our catalog as like open data or things like that, please send those to us. We're always kind of looking to hear feedback from folks on things they want to bring into the catalog. But the fact that you can, excuse me, bring these two pieces together, you don't have to go searching for the right ST function or RS function all the time. That gets you over those hurdles very quickly and allows that quick exploration. And then finally to I've seen some other demos where you can turn that notebook into a Python script for a job. So you're actually going to from complete idea to executable job all in Wherobots in one shot. So that's very cool to see all those pieces come together. Um, yeah, cool. Any other final notes about the MCP and things like that?
Yeah, there's one thing I want to share just to demonstrate that, the chat window wasn't a sleight of hand that I showed. This is the query execution. So it's like within minutes, it's executing queries, processing results, self-correcting, looking at documentation, updating the query, doing it again. And then once it normally takes about in the order of 15 to 20 minutes for this type of complex analysis to complete, but you get actual insights at the end of it. So I want to highlight that.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I recommend people, the documentation link is here. So I recommend everyone checks that out as well. Yeah, Puyan, thank you so much for taking the time. Yeah, really excited to, kind of see people and see where they takes this because I think this is one of those things that can really help people just move much quicker. And then also, kind of add other context in from these different pieces. So very cool. Last thing I was going to share, just as I was kind of, we were going in the background here. I was kind of playing around with the RasterFlow toolkit here that I mentioned before. So what I did here is pulled in our sample notebook. This is pulling a county within Kansas. It's actually running here, connecting to the RasterFlow client. It created the model outputs, picked a time range to run through, pulled all that together, and then created a nice nice view and plot of that data here. So you can see all the different predictions and the different pieces we put together. So you can actually see that on the map here. We can kind of pan in and zoom and see our predictions and field boundaries and stuff like that. And then it's going through right now. And I just want to give you a sense of what it can do is it's vectorizing the mosaics right now. I'm letting that process run. So that's an entire, county that run on. This is on our tiny runtime. So it's, you can certainly run this much faster and at much larger scales too. It's going to then vectorize those, pull those into Wherobots DB as vector boundaries and things like that. And then if you wanted to, you can build these as a PM tiles data set and actually visualize them in an application. So all these things are like kind of complete end to end. We're literally going from like model and raw raster data all the way down to something that you can quickly visualize and put in a production application here. And that's I think those are the use cases that get, are really exciting to me to see people take those things from end to end. So for now, I wanted to kind of pause there on some of the different things we have and then answer any other questions. So open it up to anything you have about what we're doing at Wherobots. If you're having any issues or questions or things you're trying to solve, if there's anything related to Wherobots is on the table. I'll leave it at that, so you can kind of bring it from there. But yeah, so Jacob had another question: how high is the usage of LLM credits and tokens when interacting with the Wherobots MCP? I'm going to turn that one over to you.
Yeah, I don't have hard numbers to answer that question, but I haven't seen it like do crazy things. So like yesterday I ran like some coding task that consumed 33,000 tokens on Claude Code. This doesn't even come close. But and then the token economics is also dependent on the tool that you use. From what I've seen, like Copilot, they all have different schemes. I don't have hard numbers, but I've never ran out of tokens, for instance.
Great. Yeah, I'm seeing if there's any other questions, you can go ahead and drop those in the Q&A. Last things I'll kind of plug as we're going along here and to see if there's any final questions that pop in. If you're looking just to get started with our platform and trying to look up some different things there, a few different places I would point you to is, first of all, just get it signed up for an account. You can sign up for a community account and get started with some basic tutorials, or you can just skip right to the AWS Marketplace and sign up there to get access to all the different pieces and everything that we have. Anytime you log in, what you can do is you can go ahead and go into and open a notebook. So I'll just demonstrate that here really quickly. I think we have one more question coming in. I'll see if there's a few others that pop up as well. So anytime you run a notebook here, just head into this is what it'll look like when it starts for the first time. If you hit examples, there's a couple notebooks here. There's a few that are just you're getting started. These are the ones that I recommend going through from end to end just to get a sense of what we're doing. You can also go into things like analyzing data. This will allow you to look at very specific data sets. You can do PM tiles from roads generation, look at isochrone data, do GEDIS or GI star clustering, DB scan. There's the RasterFlow ones in here as well, zonal stats and large scale joins from that perspective. There's also some like open data connections, so you can see, oh, here's how I connect to common open data sets. So things like that. If you've never been into Wherobots before, this is what our cloud console looks like here. So every time you start a notebook, you can check out the notebooks. You can start here. The data hub allows you to see both the data from our open data catalog. This is what the cataloging service looks like when you take a data from a temporary data set into a full data frame. You can see all the different things we have here, explore the different data. This is the complete Overture Maps data set. Storage, if you need to upload storage here, you can actually upload that data and store that here. And then anytime you want to check kind of like workload history and tracking, you can see all those different things here. So there's lots of different stuff happening from that perspective. Question from Ben, is there ability to predefine common tasks or tool flows so that there's less back and forth on nudging the analysis in a certain way, like with isochrones?
To the extent that you can use the context window to point it to specific things, yes, there is. You can just say, hey, like just run this notebook, or go use this specific table. Like as you saw, I actually said, I don't agree with your table selection. I want you to use this table, and it honored that. So that's what's available today. A lot of it, truth be told, relies on the LLM itself, less about tools that we give it. Um, in terms of what we're thinking about building, yeah, having some sort of flow is definitely something that we're thinking about. Like, this is in our roadmap. It doesn't have like essentially a committed date to it yet, but that once we have that, it will be also surfaced to the MCP server as well.
Nice. Great. Yeah. I don't see any other questions. If you want, feel free to drop those in, get any last minute ones here. Yeah, if you have any questions on anything we covered from MCP server or through to RasterFlow, need some help getting started, anything like that, or want to check out some of the opportunities, some of the workshops we have coming up, webinars, and then the geospatial data engineering course. A few different ways you can do that. You can reach out to me directly. My email is just matt@wherobots.com. So it's a pretty easy one. And you can just send me a message there. You can reach out via our website and check those different things out there. So you can just get in touch with us from that perspective. And then anytime you want to just send a message to our LinkedIn page as well, you can just do that as well. It's just the Wherobots on LinkedIn. So we're happy to help. Ryan says he's going to pivot some of the things he's doing our way, which is great to hear. So we're excited to hear that. Yeah, thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. We're going to make these a little bit more out of a regular occurrence here to check in, talk about some different things. So the next time you see one of these, make sure you have tried some different things out. We want to hear from what you're doing, and we can actually share and work with some of those things together. So that's it. Thanks for joining us today. Puyan, thanks for the demo. It sounds like there's a lot of people interested in the MCP server. And yeah, we will see you all either next time or in one of the events we have coming up.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.